Hello and welcome to another Office 365 Hours. My name is Christian Buckley. I am the Brand Alliance Director here at AvePoint and also a Microsoft MVP and Regional Director. And I am joined today by fellow MVPs John White and Norm Young from tyGraph. John is the co-founder and CTO of tyGraph, and Norm is the Director of Collaborative Analytics with tyGraph. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's a great topic. I know we're going to jump right into it. So let's start with kind of the basics for those that are unfamiliar with tyGraph. What is tyGraph, and maybe a quick history of the company?
Well, in a nutshell, tyGraph is reporting and analytics for Microsoft 365. We started out with the product in 2014 as basically doing the same thing, but for Yammer only at the time. There was a big demand for collaborative analytics around conversations that were happening in Yammer. And let's just say the out-of-the-box products didn't quite fit the bill. So we wound up building this in conjunction with Microsoft, actually. It took off in the marketplace. And then over the years, we've expanded out to taking in SharePoint signals, obviously Teams signals. We do OneDrive, and we do intranet around SharePoint pages as well. So it's grown into this thing that can really give you really good visibility into how your organization's collaborating.
John, interesting. Why don't you tell them how the name tyGraph came to be? Because you kind of touched on it there.
It's a secret. No, it actually was, it's always been my contention. You don't want to use a product name in another product's name in your name. And there was a push to have this thing called the Yammer graph. And it's not. So it's a good thing we picked tyGraph. That's actually what the T and the Y stand for. That's something not too many people know.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes.
I've known you guys for years. Wow.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that when I started working at tyGraph, they told me that backstory, and I was like, it makes total sense, because until this point, the name didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yep.
But
it's obviously a lot more than Yammer now, so we don't. But
yes,
that's correct.
And that's true.
Absolutely.
And tyGraph has come a long way from the original Yammer story. Yammer continues, and we find a lot of organizations who have a large investment in Yammer community management want to continue to use that product to understand, what's the tone in a community, what are the best threads, is the executive messaging landing. But it's matured now, and we've got products like John mentioned in Teams and OneDrive and SharePoint. And so now tyGraph is becoming more than just a reporting and analytics tool. It's becoming a platform for gaining insights into understanding if an investment that they're making in something like Yammer or something like a SharePoint intranet is paying off. To try and quantify the reach, try and quantify activity beyond the out-of-the-box experience. And what you get with the out-of-the-box stuff has its place, and it's good at what it does. But We always talk about wanting more data, data. But the truth is, we're drowning in a sea of data.
Mm.
Yeah.
Organizations need information and insights. And so that is something that we're able to derive with tyGraph. We're able to give that data context. We're able to see it over time. We're able to see it within an organization. We have all of these elements of context. And that's how we take that data that we harvest from your Office 365 tenant and turning it into information that you can take action on.
Well, something that's so misleading about, analytics platforms, even think of like Power BI, and when you go and you see these beautiful dashboards and get all these powerful insights out of the data, of how much work it actually is to capture the data, to scrub that data, to organize it in a way, all of which happens really before you could start building the dashboards and making that useful. And so that's where, I think people are overwhelmed with the volume of like all the different locations that you'd have to go and pull from out of the box, the admin consoles, different reports to be able to do that, then figure out how to pull it all together and then just tell an intelligent story around that.
That's right.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in and get on my soapbox a little bit about the difference, because we use these terms interchangeably, right? Reporting and analytics, right? We say reporting and analytics. I say reporting and analytics. Some people just use the terms interchangeably, and they're two very different things. Reporting is answering questions that you have, right? I want to know how many users were on this site this week or this last month. Analytics is all about when that number is off, how do I go find out why? Right? I need to be able to dig around in my data, and the data has to be structured. To your point, the data has to be structured that way, and also has to be very granular. So there are two very different approaches to the same thing, and there are different tools that you'll use in order to achieve both of those.
Well, one thing I know we're going to come back to the product and the featured capabilities, but with, of course, the huge news, if people are probably aware of this, AvePoint acquired tyGraph a couple weeks back. The announcement was out. So why did AvePoint acquire tyGraph? How does tyGraph fit into the broader AvePoint customer story?
It's funny. It's a good fit, not just for AvePoint. It's a good fit for tyGraph. We actually identified AvePoint as a potential partner years ago, or as a very good, if we were going to be acquired by someone, who would we want it to be? And actually,
I seem to recall those conversations a couple years back.
AvePoint was actually at the top of those. That's before you were there. Yeah. Basically, we're measuring what AvePoint to some degree controls, right? Because AvePoint is very, very strong in the governance space. We're certainly in the same space, right? We're in the Microsoft 365 arena. AvePoint has some really, really good governance tools, monitoring tools, etc. But we have some very, very good reporting tools and analytics tools. So we can start to prove, frankly, some of the value of AvePoint's other tools at one level. But the two companies together can really give you a 360-degree view of your organization's collaboration. And it's really, it's one way we're, cornering the market on organizational data around collaboration. It's really a very, very good strategic and tactical fit.
That's interesting. I knew our product had so much promise that we were probably going to get bought up, but I didn't necessarily think AvePoint. And I've been connected with AvePoint for a number of years through their Community Champions program, and it never occurred to me that this might happen. And it was one of our customers, one of our mutual customers, who presented an idea saying, wouldn't it be great if when I'm in my AvePoint governance product, I could get the context to tell me if people are using the site, how they're using the site, who's using it, and start to see the trends to really inform the governance decision-making process. And it was at that point the fit made perfect sense. And I do think we have a really bright future together.
Yeah, there are many different things, as well as being able to surface other data through end users and admin applications and other services. Yeah, there's a lot. I know we won't get into the roadmap or anything, but there's a lot of ideas, great things that we could do, and things that these shared customers are asking for today, which will immediately we go out and can start co-marketing that as, hey, here's even more capabilities that you have for customers for either area.
Well, I mean, one of the things is no secret. We've been over the years, the face of our product has been Power BI because it's given us some really advanced analytical reporting capabilities, and we've built out these very complex models with some pretty impressive measures that you would use, scores that people might not think of to use against their data to see how they're moving along. But one of the I don't even want to call it a downside, but one of the limitations, I suppose, is that we need Power BI to run it. You have to go to this Power BI place, and we've done a lot of work in recent years in delivering that information via alternate mechanisms through web parts on a SharePoint page, for example. And we've been building out, and we're there now with an API that will allow you to call into that API and now surface those very same insights in a variety of different locations, including in this case AvePoint's product. And that's why I bring it up. So we're expanding the reach, I suppose, of our analytic capabilities.
And it is exciting because we're going beyond analytics, and we're starting to build towards a platform.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about the Power Platform. I can see so many opportunities with tapping into that tyGraph API to start building out solutions. Power Platform, maybe they go a little bit beyond the citizen developer thing, but they start to plug some of the gaps that we have in some of these larger enterprise systems.
Yeah, I just spent 2 weeks at two different major Power Platform events. Very, very well attended, and the level of energy was extremely high. So, yeah, that's obviously an area we want to be able to tap right into.
Well, probably the two areas where there's the most activity and energy in the Microsoft ecosystem. So one, you've been talking about around the Power Platform, and so much that's happening there. And AvePoint the things that we're working on along that. Of course, tyGraph side, has worked in the Power Platform space. The other area where Microsoft is really focusing is around Microsoft Viva. So the employee experience. They always refer to as their Viva experiences. I say modules. People get like, there's different offerings within the Viva SKU, that if you will. So how does tyGraph fit into Microsoft's Viva plans and story?
It's interesting because it's people are always talking about Viva like it is a tool or a platform or an approach, and truthfully, it's all of those things. What we see today in the current Viva offerings, whether it's connections, insights, learning, goals, and so on, is that we're trying to create this holistic interconnections with the employees to their organizations. A lot of it is born out of the pandemic of the past few years. Employees feeling disconnected from the organization, from their peers, from their work, protecting their own personal safe time or their own personal home time, excuse me. And so the signals that something like Viva Insights can get are very interesting. They're very good for users to start to establish boundaries, start to understand how they're working. But it's that nucleus is the user. A lot of that telemetry is being driven out of email, Outlook, calendars. That doesn't necessarily tell how people are working together. Okay, so collaboration might happen in a meeting, it might happen in an email, it's true. But collaboration across Microsoft 365 is a different story. Collaboration happens in Yammer. When you post a question and I answer it and you accept that as the correct answer. Knowing if a certain geography in the world is feeling engaged to the content in the intranet, or if Teams adoption at an organization is simply a chat in a meeting and not the other parts of it. So tyGraph and how it will complement the Viva story is it will start to fill in the remaining gaps that exist around the information about how an organization works. So this is the important piece. This is how an organization works. AvePoint works different than Microsoft. tyGraph works different than AvePoint. Understanding a baseline comes from the data, comes from the information that you gain from something like tyGraph. So to understand the employee experience, you have to understand how the organization works. And there's a lot of different pieces of context. Geography, if you're a multinational corporation. Time, if you're a mature organization. Organizational information, if you're a large group across multiple divisions or departments. So to have that information helps you understand beyond the smaller initial delivery of Viva Insights and some of the other platforms.
Yeah, and I think just almost to paraphrase what you're saying, there isn't one way to work that's correct. Every organization.
That's why they refer to it as experiences.
Yes,
I think that's why.
But it's hard to set when you've got a reporting. You got reporting capabilities like what you'll find in Insights. It's kind of a one size fits all approach, whereas it's better, I think. Well, I mean, the way one works, it's kind of like food. Which is the right food you eat, right? There are many good ones and there are some bad ones. And I think for an organization, what you want to see is when things change. And that's the sort of thing you can see. You got to see it over time, not just snapshot, not just the last week, but how have things changed in the past year or over the past couple of years? When you can start to see patterns, that change isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it might alert you to certain other things that are going on in the organization. So we can spot that.
To that point, I mean, short-term spikes, which really aren't as important as looking at the long-term trends of data. That's always the problem. And I think the three of us, we've had these conversations before about, the mistake that people that manage by spreadsheet and a lot of stats, they'll look at a report and they'll make a judgment based on a snapshot in time versus the state of that and what it's actually with the movement of that data over time, which is so critical. And that's so much of what Viva is about is to inform managers of, hey, here's what's happening with my people. It's not the answer to the question of what my people are doing. It informs that conversation that you then go and have. And I always use an example of having run operations teams and support teams and going and looking at individual stats based on tickets that are open and closed and how much time. And you look at the stats and say, well, this employee has consistently over time taken twice as long as anybody else to close tickets. Doesn't tell you the story of, yes, they're the one taking the most difficult tickets off of everyone else's plate. That's why.
Or they're the ones interacting with the end user and having a much better experience.
Correct.
I mean, that's
right. So you need, and that's why you look at the all the stats over time to be able to go and look at what is the customer success, and you have that. So that support engineer might have double, triple the numbers of customer success feedback and numbers because they've got the deeper relationship or the stronger connection with the product team. So those are all things that, again, if you've worked in the space and over time, and if you're informed by that data, but then you then build your management systems around that. You take that knowledge and you go have conversations, and you have a much more holistic view of what's happening in the company, not just looking at a spreadsheet and saying it's told me this, therefore, here are my decisions based off of that snapshot.
Right. The more data, the better. I mean, my favorite BI quote is, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So sorry.
It's also a maturity when you think about it. We want to get the data to understand how something is performing. We want to take that data and transform it into information, which we all agree. But then, the ultimate tier is insights into what's happening, right? That way you inform the decisions that you make and the behaviors that you take.
Well, this is a perfect fit into my last question or topic is, how tyGraph fits into a company's overall digital transformation plans. So I know there's a lot of talk about, what is digital transformation, and the mistake again is made. It's a very look at a snapshot, a spreadsheet of data, a point in time, which is, hey, we deployed these 3 new tools, therefore we're digitally transformed. Nope. That's not what that means.
Well, I think one of Ed's favorite things to show within our product is literally our digital transformation score, and it's a measure of how adopted people are within different technologies in the stack. And the point being, if you look at someone who has nothing adopted, but you also look at someone else who has some things adopted, but other things that might complement that, but they haven't adopted them yet, they might be a better target for an adoption program. So you can better target your organization around what you want to have adopted, what benefits you're going to have, and it can help identify the champions in your organization that will do that within subgroups like departments, et cetera. You may find some people are very well adopted and running very efficiently. Well, you might want to tap them to explain to their colleagues how adopting some of this technology will benefit. There's a bunch of stuff that fits in there, and that's just one way of increasing adoption is the answer there. But there's many more.
And the out of the box, the solution, the productivity score, the transformation score that you have, and that's based on the best practices, the things that you've gone and seen. But a company could go in and fine tune what adoption actually means within each of those workloads to make it very nuanced and specific to the collaboration culture within that organization.
Yeah, again, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah,
not one size fits all, and sometimes on the surface, what looks to be highly adopted because a workload was turned on, users used it once and haven't come back to it. So, you don't always get regression of user behaviors inside of some of the data that you get. So we'll find some organizations, they want to make sure that, their adoption campaigns, their adoption initiatives are sticky, and they'll identify regressed users, come back and reinvest in that training to make sure they understand why it didn't stick the first time.
Right.
And change is hard, right? It might be good for you and I because we're in the IT space, but the users out on the floor doing the work of the business and the organization, they want, frictionless experiences, and turning on something new that's complicated, that sounds
that's why
the same
you also
as every
have
other product.
Different adoption levels for different business units within a single organization. There's a reason why, if you look at the collaboration patterns between the marketing organization and your field engineers and your development organization, they're going to gravitate towards different technologies and subcultures within your organization. And so you can't have one way of looking at adoption for each of those workloads across those different teams. You just need to be aware of those differences.
Yep. That's right. You need the context. So everyone probably remembers, like when Teams first came out, one of the great selling points was less email. That's fantastic. If you're an internal facing IT person like I was at the time, I thought this is great. Tell that to the salesperson or someone who's, external customer facing. That doesn't make any sense. But something like tyGraph, where you can get the context, right? This is why a sales team, knowing that it is the sales team that is not using Teams as much as email, makes sense. And so we need this type of insights to make proper decisions when we're talking about adoption in organizations.
Yeah, I mean, we can even come back to your the previous topic about Viva. I mean, Viva has a module that's announced. I'm not sure where it's at in the cycle, but called Viva Amplify, and it's essentially a multi-channel marketing for inside the organization. Well, do you want to measure the effectiveness of a campaign? How are you going to do that? Well, if you can track the same message through all the different channels, you can start to make various comparisons. And again, not to say which one was right, but which one was more effective to which audience, so you can better tweak and better tailor your example. And even, I mean, we can take it right down to the metric level itself. So here's a question for you. What constitutes a page view, right? Opening up in a browser, well, I can do that and never read the page. I do that half the time, right? It's like, okay, I know enough. I know everything I need to know about it. We can actually allow an organization to specify how long they must have spent on the page, and how far down that page they must have scrolled for that to count as a view, right? That's getting pretty granular in terms of being able to measure these things effectively.
Well, I know that's a lot to go through, but I want to thank John and Norm for participating in today's office hours. And for those, if you've not yet subscribed, of course, you can go and follow us on the AvePoint YouTube page, sign up for the notifications. Office hours is every other Wednesday, so on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, always at 11 a.m. Eastern. Please go and sign up. And so Norm and John, thanks a lot for your time. And thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks a lot for having us, Christian.
Great to be here.